Imagine looking in the mirror. You see a totally modern person looking right back at you, right? But are you really 100% modern human? Think again, because the scientific truth we're about to uncover might actually shock you. Your reflection just might have a little bit of a Neanderthal looking back.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the African Cradle, the ultimate evolutionary training ground.
Africa wasn't just some random starting point on a map. It was literally the perfect incubator. For millions of years, while the rest of the globe was freezing over in deep ice ages, Africa stayed remarkably ecologically stable, providing this massive safe haven for life. But it definitely wasn't boring or stagnant. Shifting climates, like moving from dense forests to wide-open savannas, put a ton of evolutionary pressure on early primates. This is what actually drove our ancestors to stand upright and walk on two legs. Add in abundant plant and animal resources, a really rich baseline of primate ancestors, and open geographic routes to Eurasia, and you've got the ultimate recipe for the highest genetic diversity anywhere. It was exactly what natural selection needed to get to work.
And all those factors combined to build this massive, undeniable family tree where every single early human species traces its roots right back here. Just looking at the timeline of our origins, 2.5 million years ago, Homo habilis pops onto the scene. Fast forward to 1.8 million years ago, and Homo erectus is already making the very first journeys out of the continent. But back at home, the evolution just keeps going. Around 600,000 years ago, we get Homo heidelbergensis, and finally, the big one, around 200,000 years ago, our own direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, make their grand appearance.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Great Migration, or the Big Move. So here's the thing. Early groups of humans actually did try to leave Africa earlier, but they kind of failed. We have fossil evidence in places like Greece and Israel showing early Homo sapiens venturing out between 120,000 and 210,000 years ago. But these were really small, isolated populations. They either went completely extinct or were totally absorbed, leaving practically zero genetic mark on us today. Contrast that with the big wave. Around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, there was this massive sustained movement of humans marching out of Africa, and that specific group, they are the overwhelming source of all living non-African ancestry in the world today.
So why did this specific wave succeed when the others didn't? Well, it took a perfect storm of factors. First, the climate shifted dramatically. These lush green windows full of rivers and lakes suddenly opened up in areas like the Sinai Peninsula that used to be totally impassable deserts. At the exact same time, human populations inside Africa were booming, creating a huge pressure to push outward for new resources. Plus, these humans had a massive cultural and technological upgrade. We're talking advanced stone tools, mastery of fire, and complex symbolic thinking. Oh, and some scientists even point to the colossal Toba volcanic eruption around 74,000 years ago as a massive bottleneck that might have literally forced the surviving populations to quickly disperse. It was basically do or die.
And that sets the stage perfectly for Section 3, Meeting the Neanderthals, the meetup in Eurasia.
Picture this. Around 70,000 years ago, as this massive wave of our ancestors moved into the Middle East and expanded toward Europe, they weren't stepping into an empty world. They actually crossed paths with their evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals, who had already been living and evolving over there for hundreds of thousands of years. And when these two totally distinct human species finally met face to face, it wasn't just a passing glance in the prehistoric wilderness.
Nope, they actually interbred. This is the absolute core of our mystery today. Scientists have proven that this meetup resulted in what biologists call gene flow, which is the direct transfer of genetic material from one population to another. Modern humans and Neanderthals successfully made it. Imagine two entirely different colored strands of DNA suddenly braiding together, weaving Neanderthal genes directly into our ancestral lineage.
But how do we know for sure? That's Section 4, the genetic evidence, solving the evolutionary detective story.
Now, it's a pretty massive claim to make, right? You might be wondering how geneticists can actually prove this mixing happened recently. It's a genuinely tricky challenge because both Homo sapiens and Neanderthals share a deep common ancestor from about 500,000 years ago. So the big question was, how on earth do you distinguish between DNA that we share just because we have a really ancient common ancestor versus DNA that we picked up from hooking up just 70,000 years ago?
Well, there's actually a completely elegant solution to that problem. You see, when you inherit DNA from a common ancestor 500,000 years ago, that genetic code gets chopped up and shuffled around with every single passing generation. Fast forward 500,000 years, and you're left with tiny, scattered, microscopic similarities. But when geneticists sequence modern human DNA today, they don't find scattered bits of Neanderthal code, they find long, continuous, perfectly intact stretches of matched DNA. Because this mixing happened only 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, those genetic blocks just haven't had enough time or enough generations to break apart. Those long blocks are literally the smoking gun of recent interbreeding.
And this gives us rock-solid geographic proof that lines up perfectly with the fossil timeline. Think about the geographic distribution of this DNA today. If Neanderthal DNA was just from some ancient shared ancestry, everyone on Earth would have it equally, right? But they don't. African populations have almost none, simply because their ancestors stayed in Africa and completely missed that Eurasian meetup. But European, Asian, and Native American populations, the DNA is present in all of them, because they are direct descendants of that specific migration wave that bumped into Neanderthals in the Middle East and beyond.
And absolutely nailed this down beyond any shadow of a doubt, scientists used some heavy-duty math. Specifically, a powerful statistical method called d-statistics, or the ABABA test. Without getting too bogged down in the equations, this method firmly proves that gene versions entirely unique to Neanderthals physically flowed into the genomes of non-African humans. It proves the interbreeding mathematically. Which brings us to this highly specific, magical number, 1 to 2%. Because of that prehistoric meetup, the long blocks of continuous DNA and the mathematical proof, it is a proven scientific fact that modern humans outside of Africa carry exactly 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA today. It's a permanent physical record of our past.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 5, the Neanderthal legacy, how ancient genes affect you today.
Because this isn't just dusty, ancient history, and we aren't just talking about abstract letters in a sequence. Those ancient genes are awake and functioning inside your body right this very second. That 1 to 2% is doing some real heavy lifting. Neanderthal DNA actually influences your immune system responses. Back in the day, it gave early humans rapid skin and hair adaptations, acting almost like a genetic shield against the freezing cold climates of Ice Age Europe. But it's kind of a double-edged sword too. Today, those exact same Neanderthal genes are linked to our risk levels for conditions like diabetes and depression. Incredibly, they even play a role in determining how severely a person reacts to the COVID-19 virus. It's wild to think your health today is deeply tethered to a 70,000-year-old romantic encounter.
By piecing together the deep historical timeline out of Africa, the undeniable fossil record, and this precise genetic methodology that tracks continuous DNA blocks, this explainer shows us exactly how human evolution really works. We didn't just replace older species, we absorbed them. As this quote beautifully puts it, you aren't just one species, you're a living mosaic of ancient history.
I really hope this leaves you wanting to explore your own genetic history because it is such a wildly complex, beautiful story of survival, migration, and connection. So the next time you look in the mirror, ask yourself, which parts of you are truly modern and which are an ancient legacy? Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and go discover the Neanderthal within.